Welcome to another episode of the RAG podcast. And for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth. Since early 2019, I've been interviewing the most successful and innovative recruitment owners to learn how they rose to the top of their game. In season 7, I'm going to be having raw, authentic, and insightful conversations with agency owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, people across the industry. And I want to be learning about their ambitions, what's happening behind the scenes in their agencies today, and their plans to navigate difficult market conditions. I'll be bringing you the latest and greatest recruitment stories every single week on Wednesdays at noon across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast. On this week's show, I was joined by Jamie Reynolds. Now, Jamie is he's technically not working right now. He's not a recruitment founder like the rest of my guests. Jamie was brought in to Cordant Group, Cordant people, big recruitment organization, over 9 years ago to effectively help with some initial tender work. He'd ran big global businesses in the facilities management space, services space, and he went from a 17-year-old to a CEO in 10 years. And he was brought in and ended up turning around a $100 million a year account. And then he took over a $300 million a year in sales turnover recruitment firm that was losing money, and within 5 years got it to a 10 million EBITDA. He breaks down in this session how he got that change, little things like finding efficiencies, creating a better culture. But really, Jamie's not a recruiter. He's someone who sits at the top, who explains, who gets people on board to a bigger picture, and he finds ways to turn businesses around for growth and profitability. He was then part of the T20 acquisition of the Cordant Group and has worked with the likes of Halian, who I've had on recently, and has recently left the organization. So he's very open. We go into lots of detail around the things he's done. But if you're interested in finding out how you can scale but find profitability, then Jamie's the man. I hope you enjoy this episode. Without further ado, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Good afternoon, Sean, and thank you for having me.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure, mate. We've had this in the diary. I nearly cancelled it. Apologies. I've had a load of change going on as we come into the end of the year, but we're here now. It is this will be going live in January, but we're filming this as we're in the run up to Christmas in mid-December, and it's a busy time for everyone. So thanks for making the time for us. I've given a brief introduction to you, Jamie. As you're not running a business today, you're not a recruitment owner like a lot of the guests I have. It's a hard one, but
yeah.
How would you, if someone was going to say, who is Jamie Reynolds on a really high level? I don't want like detailed stories, just like, how do you describe yourself as to what you do?
Wow, well, that's a very broad question, but who is Jamie Reynolds? Well, I'm synonymous with the animal, a rhino, and so I guess there's characteristics of the rhino that reflect me as a person, and that's relentless and resilient and rugged, and I'm a people person. Every organization that I've gone into and had the privilege to lead or work for has been a people organization, and I've got people to follow. I've got people to believe in themselves. I've got people to dream the impossible and make it happen. And so I guess at the very, very highest level, I'm a great people person. And that includes, of course, customer, candidates, colleagues, the whole 360 piece. And I guess, part of that authentic, people-centric leader comes from the journey that I've been on, 48 years of age, sitting here, exiting a business that's was doing 1.4 billion in sales, and yet I'm a YTS failed fat kid from school in a council estate that was earning 68 pence an hour. So along that journey there's lots of my stories, and then I can share without the bullshit. I can share and people can resonate with it, and so I think that in a very sort of high level is the Jamie.
So you've ran some pretty sizable businesses. You've been through exits, and you've spent a period of time in the recruitment sector. You're not necessarily from the recruitment sector. You didn't cut your teeth as a recruiter, right?
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, I've been in the recruitment sector, I guess, for the last 9.5 years, and we'll talk about that in a moment in various guises. But prior to that, I grew up in the engineering, FM, real estate sector, facilities management, and spent the best part of 20 years in that space. And I guess, coming from a services sector into the recruitment sector, there are vast amount of similarities. There's some significant differences, and maybe we'll touch upon those from my experience. But, ultimately, in that service world, whichever services we were delivering at the coalface, whether that was engineering, energy management, cleaning, catering, or man guarding, it's a service, but included people. And of course, we were serving property that was owned by customer and people. And in the middle, we had great facilitators.
And you're deploying people to recruiting people ultimately to fill a service. It's not, there's huge
absolutely. So it's very, they're very similar. And so, building businesses in the service sector, I think gave me, clearly a different view. And when I came into the recruitment sector, by default, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but I got to look at the businesses and ask the silly questions. Why do we do that? And is that the best way? And what could we do if we had A, B, and C? And so I started to get people to think differently, and therefore that created opportunity to change and transform. And that's ultimately what I've been doing for the sort of last decade, really.
So talk us through the journey then of, like, I don't need the detail, but like, how did you get from, a lad from Stoke to running businesses? How did you get to like CEO level?
Yeah,
or senior level? Like, what was your, I guess, what's your ingredient to rising through quite quickly to get to the top?
So I'll give you the short version. I suppose we'll be on till tomorrow. So kicked out of school. Potteries lad, Stoke-on-Trent, went to pick my grandma up, was just turning 17, went into a pub, thought I'd buy that underage beer. I got a beer, and the business next door that I started with was a company called George S. Hall. The founder was, George. And they've been going sort of 90 years. I get talking to a short Geordie guy at the bar. It turns out he's the managing director. I tell him his HR department's terrible because they didn't send me a Dear John letter. He gave me his business card. He asked me to come to an interview the following week. I did. And to my great surprise and shock, I was interviewed by his PA at the time. And she was a dragon. She told me I was a young man when she opened the door. I qualified that very quickly. And she said, this job is for receptionist. You're going to sit on, the reception desk and meet and greet. And for a split second, I swore in my mind. And then I said, no, I can do that. And I went and sat on reception. I thought I was the best receptionist ever. Good morning, George's Hall. Jamie speaking. I sat there for an hour. I'm actually a failed receptionist because I didn't get the job. But the lady walked past and she rang me up, and Elaine Doxey, her name, never forget it. And she said, Jamie, I've got a YTS position. I heard you didn't get that job, blah, blah, blah. I said, what does that mean? She said, well, we're going to send you back to school and we'll pay you £27.50, 68 pence an hour to basically make the coffee, fill the photocopier, and we'll start to put you in the accounts department. And so I did. 3 months later, I bump into the MD in the toilets. I'm excited, a million miles an hour. He unravels the story. I'm invited down to a meeting, and George apologised profusely. But at the time, he had three engineering graduates from London who were say 24, 25. They got a property there where they were developing a management program. And he asked me, would I leave home? I said, yes. I moved out of family digs that weekend. I moved into the property, and they put me back to school for the next 10 years doing, accounting, operations. I finished my degree at Staff's Uni in evenings. And I went from that 17-year-old YTS. I went to New York at 29 to open up their US operation, which is still going today. I'm very proud of that. And at 33, I was appointed co-CEO. So the business went from 40 million revenues to $250 million. And I became co-CEO. My partner had a very severe freak skiing accident, so I was parachuted back into the UK, and the family delisted the business 12 months later. And so at that point, I come out after 18 years. So my story is 18 years long in that organisation. And
wow.
And then went into another FM sort of business turnaround where I guess I had my first experience of private equity. So we may be talk later for your audience about wealth creation and lessons learned. But if you're ever granted an exclusive opportunity at a management buyout, don't believe them, because that's what I did. That's what I was offered after 2.5 years in that business. And it wasn't exclusive. It just meant they kept us on side whilst we went around getting funds, and they found to trade by it. And so on my CV, that's why I then go to Rentokil Initial Facilities, because they acquire managed support services into Serve through an acquisition. And then I got a call from a very great friend of mine who'd been a mentor, business coach, boss for a number of years in the FM sector, and he'd landed at the Cordant Group. I didn't know of the Cordant Group. The Cordant Group at that time was probably about 13, 14 different organizations. They'd got a services business in cleaning and man guarding, and all the rest of the assets were recruitment businesses of some shape or size. And so the original plan was the Cordant Group and Philip were looking to complete on an acquisition in the technical engineering space to merge together with the cleaning and the man guarding business. And Chris and I would run that. And they brought another chief exec in from Adecco to look after the recruitment brands. But actually what happened by the time I arrived is a couple of businesses were acquired: Sugarman Health and Education, and Eurostaff, the IT business with Earthstaff Property Construction in Germany. And so they basically used up all the funds, and so we didn't complete on the engineering assets that I was lined up for. And so I'm here now within the group, and it was a sort of, I would say, broad church of assets, and but they didn't speak to each other. I used to describe the Ullman family as investment angels, really. They've got this portfolio of brands, they're doing all this brilliant stuff in all sorts of territories, but actually nobody was cross-selling, there was no collaboration, there was no innovation, there was no real corporate strategy, and businesses were, trickling along at whatever rate the leader wanted, really. And so Philip asked me to stick around because they got a big bid on with a global logistics American 3PL, I think a household name that we can delivers every day in cardboard boxes. And they'd been delivering blue collar temporary work for this particular client for about 19 years since they'd arrived in the UK. And of course, it was no margin, and he was paranoid they were going to lose the business to one of the American recruitment companies. And so he asked me to go along and basically run the tender process with my experience of outsourcing. And I came back and I was quite scathing of what I saw. I mean, it blew my mind in terms of the delivery model, sort of internally our side, but also what was expected from the client side. And I came back and sort of, gave him warts and all. And he said something that was really profound. He said to me, well, what do you expect when we only pay the people? I think at the time, minimum wage was about £6.50. And I looked at him in the eyes, and I'd grown up on a tough council estate, and my mum and dad both cleaned. And so that was my mum and dad he was really referring to. As Philip, you're so out of touch. It's irrespective of what we pay the individual or the client's willing to pay. That doesn't define a delivery model. I said, if you look at the cleaning sectors worth billions, you've got global accounts in there and they're all making money, right? And you don't have to look at these grey margin sort of scenarios that I was quickly becoming, familiar with. And he said, look, well, go and run the bid. You've got free reign, and it was 100 million
So
revenue.
let's just stop a second. So
Yeah.
let me just rephrase what you've said so I understand it. And so you've gone into the Cordant Group, which has got recruitment firms, it's got other businesses.
Yeah.
You've been lined up for a role that's non-recruitment related. That doesn't come through because of the pot's dry. So they're like, right, on the recruitment side, in one of the brands, they've got a huge account. You don't want to name them clearly, but you have technically named them anyway because they deliver everything for everyone in the UK. So they're up for renewal on a tender with how much was that account worth on an annual basis?
100 million sales. Yeah.
100 million in sales, right?
Yeah.
You've never done a day in the recruitment sector.
Never.
What was your job title of that? Who are you at this point to these guys?
Yeah, I think they gave me the title of commercial director, but effectively I was a consulting assignment, right? And so we go in, we redesign, and for this particular customer, for the scale of opportunity, you're restricted to 10 sides of paper. So no 100-page outsourcing, blah, blah, blah. It's 10. And when you get to do the pitch deck, it's 10 slides, and one being the intro, one being the close. It's precision stuff. I always remember we finished the pitch, and the customer team, stakeholders from around the globe, really, there was a pregnant pause as they said, Jamie, you've presented an organisation we do not recognise. And don't forget, we've been servicing them for 19 years. And pregnant pause, and of course, that's really good, because we wanted change, we wanted transformation. And I came back, we've secured the business, and then Philip and Chris, they said, brilliant, now can you deliver it for us? Of course, will you go and mobilise and transition this new delivery model? I got nothing else to do at the time and said, okay, no problem, yeah, let's do it. And a couple of months later, a gap appeared in the leadership. The business was PMP Recruitment. And they came to me and said, look, Jamie, will you not only deliver the big contract, but will you transform the rest of the business? And so I came in as MD of PMP in 2016. Business was turning over collectively about 330 million. It was losing money on a look forward basis when travel and subsidy schemes.
So 330 million in turnover, and 330 million turnover, no profit whatsoever.
Yeah, no, on a look forward basis. Yeah. So and I inherited a management team that it's probably one of the I call my proudest moments trophies, but it would sit in my trophy cabinet as one of the proudest, because that management team that nobody had a great word for internally, probably externally, we set about transforming that business. And when we sold the business in 2021, we were doing circa 650 million and over 10 million of organic profit. But the management team I inherited on day one were the management team that went with the business, 18 months ago. And so transformation, come back to the question as what is Jamie? I went into that business, of course, with a different set of eyes. And I asked the business, I looked at the business, I saw the opportunities, and then I empowered the people to think differently. Almost I used I don't know if you go back as old as I am, but there was a cartoon character called Jamie and his magic torch, right? It's a bit like the genie. What could we do with this business if there was no limitations? What would Heineken do with this business if they were in recruitment? So when we looked at paperwork, I said, what happened if we, digitalize the entire process? What if a candidate who was taking 4.5 hours in a branch filling pieces of paperwork in could sit at home with a piece of technology and apply for a job? What if that could happen? And then, of course, we started to make these things happen. And that's where we created, transformation on a scale that.
So what was the business? You talk about the turnover numbers and it's losing money.
Yeah.
How many staff did the business have?
So, in terms, if you take the temporary, because it's blue collar, temporary, logistics, food, agriculture, manufacturing, all of that. So, in peak on our payroll, we would be up to 50,000 employees.
What about core staff that were not? What about head office staff that are not
you're
working on site
about
for somebody else?
300 heads, permanent heads. Yeah. So,
right.
But then you would get that volatility from sort of 8,000 to 30, 40,000, depending on requirements. So there was a term, come back to your sort of observations, and then there was a term in the business called an in-branch temp. And of course, I can ask all the silly questions, right? Because I don't know any better. So I'm like, what does an in-branch temp mean? And he said, oh, that means when we look to hire 60, temps for our customer, to manage the paperwork for that process, we have to hire a person in the office. And I'm going, so every time we scale, we have to increase overhead, right? So again, coming back to that core 300-400 heads, that may scale likewise to sort of 600-700. And so the inefficiency was, second to none, of course. And therefore, but then you started to really look at the business and understand it. And, I guess what I did is provide, environments, platforms for people to transform their business. So the first thing I did after sort of 90 days, we created a community where anybody in the business could be a part of it. But the key component was, do you have an idea that will transform this business? And by definition, I don't mean hit a budget or do the day job or hit KPIs. I mean transform. And we created working groups around the UK. And they came back and presented all their ideas, a bit like Dragon's Den, right? And we distilled all of these fantastic ideas into 20 first-year transformational projects. And we then categorized the projects into people and technology and principled and performance. And they included things like, for example, you talk about L&D, learning and development. And so the idea was at the time, let's create a university. Not let's do L&D, not let's train people. Let's not get people up the learning curve. Let's create a university and use the apprenticeship levy to give people the opportunity. If you're a picker and packer and want to do a level 1 in health and safety, you've got the opportunity. But if you want to do a master's degree, you can have the same opportunity. And so let's create a university. And so some great people went away, built that university. And of course, when we talked about L&D and pitches or talent attraction, there's something of real substance and it's deep rooted. And you take that one example, that was kind of, I guess, born out of my journey, going back to being a 17-year-old spotty fat kid who got an opportunity and was re-educated in an unorthodox way. But we took each one of those programs, and what I did and what my commitment to the people was, look, it's your great idea. We've signed it off. We'll make the resources. You've got to make it happen, and I'll facilitate. I'll hold you accountable. We'll put some, governance around process. And if we achieve all of these transformations, of course, the numbers will take care of themselves. But in my mind, it didn't matter whether we did one transformation or 10 or all 20. It was starting to build a culture of empowerment. People could think of new ways, they can embed them, they could own them. And so this business that was stagnating, stifled, had phenomenal talent in. They just weren't given the environment to actually, change their business. And so we did that, of course, and we carried that journey on for 4 or 5 years. And then in March 2020, the business transactioned. 2020, human capital came in, Tristan Ramos and the guys. Fantastic transaction because it brought a new energy, a new lifeblood. And it was at that time then they said to me, look, Jay, we'd like you to become the group CEO and take on all the businesses. And I guess, weave your magic again. And, that's a journey that's lasted for what best part of the last 4 years, which I'm sure we'll touch upon in a moment.
So I just want to go back on it a bit
Yeah,
because I think there's a lot there. There's
yeah,
a hell of a lot to them. It's huge, and there's for some people listening, they might be like, "All right, well, it all sounds great," but like,
yeah,
the question I have that is coming through my mind is a lot of recruitment businesses will sit there and try and change stuff, right? So they'll have different ideas and initiatives. They might have a little committee, even in a small business, you might have a little committee where the people are like, I'll do this and I'll do that. What advice would you give someone then that wants to make a number of different projects run at the same time? Because what you're saying is 20 projects. That sounds like change fatigue to me. That sounds like a risk. That if you're trying to do all these things at once, how many of them are going to fall on each other and cause problems? And so what's your advice to people around
so my first
building
advice,
a robust
yeah.
project?
So first advice would be, whilst I probably had lots of ideas of what to do, if it's my idea and then I ask people to do it, it becomes a task. So the first part is the people have got to want to do something, right? It's got to be their idea. And if they own it and really believe in it, then they're going to, in my experience, be galvanized to do it beyond the day job as well, right? And also, if you're linking people to, so you've got the passion and you've got the idea, but then you've also got the purpose. So purpose is really important. So I talked about the university idea. That was one. So let's take another one. So, most organizations want to do good things, right? Give back, charities, blah, blah, blah. And what we tapped into very quickly was in that high volume blue collar space, the criminal activity around modern day slavery was, is prevalent, right? And so, people were, there was labor exploitation in that sector, right? And so I went and researched this and got to understand it. And actually, this is people taking passports off people, housing, it is modern day slavery. And we then, through that research, connected to charities that were supporting the victims of modern day slavery, right? And so we became associated with the charity Unseen, which support victims of a higher classification. So really, hard done by individuals. And what that did is it galvanized the business because across all our warehouses and factories, there was demographics that were either involved because they were policing the sites or, they'd seen examples of modern day slavery. So what we wanted to do is create good working practices, and we wanted to eradicate modern day slavery. And so there's an example of a project that everybody connected to the purpose was about helping people and actually raising awareness of the criminal activity. But by definition, in working with your customer, we wanted to break the taboo around modern day slavery, which was actually, if we find an incident, let's bury it, let's heal it, because the brand doesn't want any reputational issue. Whereas actually, what we needed to do is go, look, we've stopped modern day slavery in this site because we're going to prevent criminals from exploiting people. And if we do that and we start to raise the awareness amongst our peer groups, we get our industry associated bodies involved, we get customers to be champions and put their heads above parapets, we start changing culture and we start changing, the industry. And so there was a number of people who were absolutely
I guess what my question is though.
Sorry.
So what my question is though is like, I think you started a little bit more in that at the beginning was like, if I'm a recruitment owner, I've got 10 projects that my team want to do.
Yeah.
How do I ensure that I don't actually, the business doesn't get so project orientated that we don't get any fucking work done? And because I think that's a risk. You can take people away from their core day job of selling or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
And you can have all these amazing blue sky ideas, but actually the business doesn't move forward because everyone's working on nice to do things. So
I guess
that's the bit I think is a bit of
the
people worry about.
The nice to do, even if people are passionate about it, even if it's purpose led, it's got to lead to business success. So let's take the modern day slavery piece. You start to become the brand that is the most reputable because you're compliant, you're purpose-led, you're dealing with issues, you're treating people fairly. So when you're pitching for a contract, the next tender, and you talk about purpose and you talk about modern day slavery, we're not talking about the badge on the front, which everybody's got the badge on the front. You're now recognised because you're making change in the marketplace. And so if that gives you the one or two delta
you actually got substance.
You then win the next contract. And so, the university was not BS. It helped us attract people. It helped us, address attrition. It helped us to be recognised as being a socially, a social leader in the marketplace. We took that, for example, and said, right, how do we create social mobility? Well, what's that? Okay, well, we can be good citizens and help people in work. But actually, if there's a commercial element to it, which is our work-based learning team, who can gain funds from government sources, which gives us profit and margin, but actually it takes people from unemployed situations or deprived sort of communities and actually put those into work. So it's satisfying a customer service requirement by being a good citizen, putting people into work, good citizen, and making money from the various, revenue and GP lines. And you're a consultant who makes money. It's good business. So it's got to be 360. Your point's very valid. If it's not well thought out, then it won't get anywhere, right? It could distract the business. And I guess that's the process we went through. When we considered the projects, people didn't have a project to, go and do anything they wanted. It went through a process of really understanding, what's it going to transform our business, which is growth and profitability. End of story, because we need to move this asset. And so your due diligence has got to be ready.
How long did you have? Because I think if you're walking into a business as a CEO or the MD and you're in it's 300 million turnover, losing money, like you say, if you look forward, how long did you have to turn that around before? It's a bit like a football manager. They get into a role, and a team's going to get relegated in the Premier League. Like, they're not going to have that long. They've got to do there's only so long you can sit there and have your meetings and create a culture before someone above you's going, this needs to change. Did you have a bit of pressure on your head?
No, I didn't actually. And that, that's credit to, the Ullman family in terms of, giving people time. You could question them, you could criticize their motivations or leadership from a different angle, but for actually come in, be given autonomy of this business, and no metrics to beat or meet, that was the autonomy they gave me and everybody else who was in the leadership. I guess what I had was a big business to play with and a load of inefficiency, but some brilliant people, and we had scale, right? That's what I had, scale. And so I knew very quickly, by moving certain dials, the numbers would look transformational very quickly. So good example being is, when I went in, first thing I said to the team is, what's our ideal customer, right? And so we were very busy with lots of customers. When you looked at the metrics, we weren't really satisfying any customer to the levels that we were contractually obliged to do, right? So when you dissect that, I said, well, who's the ideal customer? Very quickly, nobody could actually articulate that. So we broke it down into a number of key areas, predominantly around, sort of working practices and, minimum wage standards. So you could say, moral, ethical, compliant, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, I said, look, who will allow us to make some money? Who will pay us on time? And who will value us as a business partner that we could possibly strategically grow with? Those are the three for me. And if a customer falls outside of those three, the question is, can we flip them from right to left, i.e. not so good customer into good customer? And if we can't, let's professionally exit. So we can really focus on the customers and the sectors.
A message from our sponsor, Vincere. Another of their products is known as Time Temp.
This is your complete integrated timesheet workforce management solution. It's pre-built, it's pre-integrated, and it's designed so no matter how much your business grows, you'll be able to keep track of every single worker in one place in your CRM. All the changes inside Vincere will sync with TimeTemp and they'll be fed back into your account, automating the entire process with two-way sync from your front to back office. Vincere's TimeTemp enables you to create shift schedules, search available workers, shortlist and book assignments in seconds. They'll also allow you to track time, track leave, track expenses within their built-in payroll engine. It's called Door Clock. And then they've also got a mobile app for the on-the-go worker. If, again, you're looking to get more from your CRM, Vincere's TimeTemp solution is another tool that enables you to perform more of your business-critical processes in your CRM. Find out if you could use TimeTemp via the link in the show notes. Right, let's get back to it.
And so come back to that idea, there was a process that we went through. And actually in that first year, we exited professionally, sales-wise, about 64 million of revenue. But we were making clearly no money on that. But what it did is free up capacity in the people to go and service the customers we wanted to work with. But more than that, what it demonstrated to the people was, actually, I valued what they do. Our management teams now value what you do. And if we're not going to work with a customer who also values you, we're not going to expect you to be there and show up. And so we were gaining trust very early that big change could happen and you could almost snowball, into real momentum.
So once you turned this business around then, and it's now, when did it start to, well, when did you start to see that your role was going to change? So you got this one business unit, PMP, into a better place. How did your own role within Cordant grow?
So 2019, it became public knowledge that the Cordant Group, was, let's say, in a process and ownership was going to change, right? I think one of the headlines in one of the national tabloids was, Cordant dash for cash. So I'm not breaking any, any trade secrets there. The reality is, at that time, I was considering my future. So kind of this time, 2019, and that's because promises on wealth creation, never materialized. So again, advice: if you've got a piece of paper and it's not watertight and it's not hard equity, then question whether the piece of paper is real. And that's what happened to me, right? So, and so I was questioning what next. Then the process for the suitors, the buyers, kicked off in earnest in sort of January 20. I met a number of the, interested parties. I guess I'm running the biggest business then, right? I'm running, 450 million revenue, and we're at about 6 million in terms of profitability. That's me as MD in 5 years. So a lot of people were interested in clearly meeting me as sort of the biggest part of the portfolio. And I have to say, I wasn't impressed with people, right? I met a lot of bright people, a lot of wealthy people, a lot of professional services people who were on big dollar for the due diligence, and nobody ignited any interest from me. And until the 2020 guys came along, and that's being brutally honest, and Tristan in particular, and something said to me, I think he's going to take this portfolio, and if he does, it could be interesting for me. So I'm not going to resign until I know the outcome. And I guess that was one of the best decisions ever made, because
and this is when the pandemic's coming as well, right?
Yeah, so I'm appointed CEO on the Friday, and if we all remember that Sunday when Boris locks us down, so I'm appointed Friday. I think it's about the 17th, and we get the lockdown on the Sunday, and now we're into a different world. You asked me before about expectations. How long have you got? Right now we've got an ownership group that's private equity, very, let's say, successful recruiters at heart, and of course the opportunity to transform the group is clearly very evident. So we're into 90-day plans there, right? And we're doing it by Zoom. I'm sat here, so I remember on the Monday morning I got a number of the leadership across the group, and we got businesses then 3 locations in Germany and Belgium, Australia, all sorts of sectors. And you can also remember these people have been my peers for the last 3 or 4 years, and now I'm, the boss, or the T-boy, as I like to call myself. And I remember, let's say there's 50 people, and kind of doing this address, and I would say 3 people had their videos on, and I say, look, guys, girls, I don't need to see your Instagram pictures, your best profiles, right? Who knows how long this thing's going to last? But what I would like, you can switch your cameras on. And I don't care if you've got really bad wallpaper, your hair's a mess, your dogs or cats are on, you're wearing your pajamas. I really don't care. And I meant it. But I would like to see you if we're going to talk, because we're going to see a lot more. I feel like we're going to be doing this a lot over the next, foreseeable few months. And people started to ping up, and I would say 85% switched their cameras on, and we're off and running. And then we're into sort of a 90-day transformation across the entire group, which was pretty tough going and, relentless.
What was involved in that? So T20 bought the Cordant Group, and then
they got the entire portfolio. Yeah. So in terms of, clearly there was lots of things we could do with property and sort of overhead costs. And so we addressed all those opportunities. But then, of course, we're looking at, headcount and people. So, we were not resilient to the pressures and the challenges. And clearly in some businesses, there was opportunity to right size. And we set about that. So, the next, if we fast forward 18 months, we're at sort of 23, 24 million in terms of profitability from the same group. So that was the scale of transformation. Now, that wasn't all through re-engineering the business. We had some businesses that did very well in terms of service provision in the pandemic, and
because there would have been certain roles that you guys. There would have been certain roles and industries that you catered for that were very robust in COVID, right? Especially like delivery drivers and all. None of that stopped, right? That all carried on.
Exactly. So P&P in particular, that was warehouse, right? Groceries, logistics. Our cleaning business, of course, was extremely busy. Disinfecting and addressing. And that was predominantly in the transport sector as well. So trains and buses, etc. Our man guarding business, protected it predominantly, infrastructure. So if you remember the big queues we used to have going for groceries, you'd have security guards making sure everything was policed. So the manpower businesses, did very well in terms of, increased requirements, and we were fit for purpose in terms of being able to deliver that. And then come back to the PMP piece. So as soon as we go remote working on that Monday, because we've re-engineered a business, by the time 2020 comes, we've gone from 22 branch locations to 1 basically hub in Manchester, and everything else is all digitalized. So that's where we got to. And so all of that experience, knowledge, and ability to do so, we simply rolled out across the other businesses. And they became very efficient very quickly. So of course that led to redundancies and furloughs and all those tough decisions being made. So there was a combination of fixed overhead across a group, and then of course the people related element. Which was,
how do you feel in those situations when you're responsible for the livelihood of so many people? How do you deal with that personally?
It's a great question. My son asked me this question the other day. He's 20 now, and it's not a trophy I put on my shiny cabinet, but I have made thousands of people redundant over my time. But I go back to being that. I think I was 20 when I had to make my first redundancy, and I laid off 6 engineers. I'm 20, and I remember this older guy, my manager at the time, sitting me down and telling me I got to do it with HR because he bottled it, right? He didn't want to face the 6 guys. And I walked into this room and got a script and, what to say and what not to say. And these guys were old enough to be my father and my granddad. And I never forget it. I delivered this the process, let's say, and I walked downstairs and I went into a side office and sat down. As I'm sitting down, and I started to cry. And I never forget the guy, one of the oldest guys in the room. He knocked on the door and he came in, and he thanked me for the empathy and respect I showed him in delivering the message. And he shook my hands and said I'll do all right in business. And so every layoff we made, I would have been on the call. I'd have been on these VCs. I'd have been explaining to the people why we were doing it. Now, of course, not everybody thanks you for that. They still, some people still hate you for the tough decisions, but at least I fronted it up. Our teams had to deliver it with great respect, empathy, and that will never change. I see so many people enjoy it. I see so many people do it in a way that is crass. Really? Yeah, I mean, even more so in the recruitment space, right? I mean, I think there's just, but they don't understand what it does to brand, right, and reputation, and there's a way of treating people, and you can deliver a very tough message in a very respectful, empathetic way, and that's my motto. And I've laid my wife off, my mum off over the times, and again, if I'm laid off, I just want the respect.
You've laid your wife and your mum off?
Yeah, not at the same time, but in various businesses over
Well, in what way? So they were working for a firm that you were leading?
They were working for me once upon a time. Yeah, my mum's passed now, but I don't think she made me Sunday dinner for a few months, but after that she was okay.
Wow,
but it's tough.
I think
right?
It's one of them things, isn't it? It's not. Yeah, I think I was told the day you don't feel bad making those decisions and dealing with that process is the day you shouldn't manage people. Like if you're completely immune to the emotional element, then you're not the right person to be leading people anyway. And it's
couldn't concur more.
Yeah, so difficult.
Yeah, and listen, times are tough, right? And I think there's, somebody asked me the other day, what do you see the biggest difference between your services sector? Because some of the conversations I'm having now, they're kind of split between both industries. And I said to them, what I've still never got my head around, I still see it now in organizations, this, people put superstars on a pedestal very quickly in the recruitment space. You go from zero to hero. You go from rookie to top biller. The money people earn in some of the sectors is off the charts. And then all of a sudden, they have a little lull, right? They have a month or a 2 month, and they're not doing 2 deals or 3 deals. And they go from hero to zero, right? And yet they've been with the organisation, superstars, and therefore you then see this hire and fire mentality, right? And you get all build and burn, as I call it, right? Somebody's been built up, and then all of a sudden they're burned, and it's because they're burnt out, right? And there's not the empathy, there's not the respect, there's not dealing with the root cause. And I'm going to football tonight, and I was describing this to my son, and I said, look, Harry Kane went to Germany and is a legend, a superstar. He scored 18 goals. If he goes the next 5 games hitting the crossbar and the post, he's the worst English import ever, right? That's the mentality. But in recruitment, I see it all the time. And therefore, something happens, right? The person invariably leaves, but they were brilliant. And why is that? Why aren't the support mechanisms there? Why isn't the trust there? Why isn't the coaching? Why aren't we dealing with mental health and resilience? Why aren't we looking at root cause issues in terms of data to get them back to being brilliant when somebody has a period of sustained, sort of blips? But it's back to that point, there's people and culture where making quick decisions, forming judgments, and I think that's the biggest.
I think this industry is short-sighted. There's no doubt this industry is short-sighted, and it's painful to deal with at times. I love the industry; it changed my life, but honestly, it's incredibly short-sighted, and that's just something I think that comes from salespeople, then managing more salespeople who manage more salespeople, and there's a lack of other types of personalities at the top in these businesses. In terms of your experience, then, so talk us through after the T20 acquisition. You mentioned that you've got all this work. You've gone through the COVID period, and I mean, I recently interviewed the guys at Halian. You were part of the deal with. Were you with T20 when they acquired Halian?
Yeah.
So
Stuart,
how did your role evolve, and then what happened to your? Sorry, go on.
Sorry, Sean, you just dropped out there.
I said, how did your role evolve, and what was your role? How did you eventually finish your experience with the investment business with T20?
So phenomenal 4 years, right? All the trophies in the cabinet, including disposals. So in 21, we start disposing of businesses because we've built a desirable brand that somebody wants to pay top price for. So we sold off the services businesses to Bidvest. We sold the Australian business, into an MBO, to Sue. Some of the healthcare businesses transactioned into wider T20. So the portfolio is getting smaller, right? We had two businesses one in
all
the
recruitment brands.
All in recruitment. Yeah, we sold PMP off to Challenge, TRC, Logistics, and they formed a manpower stroke logistics sort of empire. And then with two businesses, one in Northern Ireland, one in the UK. One was Cordant People, one was Premier People. It is one of my trophies that does sit in my cabinet because Tristan said to me the day of appointing me, the Cordant People is the one that's most vulnerable given the pandemic, the SME customer base and the infrastructure. Jamie, I think that one's going to go bust. It's the last remaining business and we've doubled the profits at EBIT level. But that is now TRC. That's the recruitment business. And then the German business, which was our IT business and property construction business, which we rebranded as Staff Group. I spent a lot of time in Germany with the team. Another war story, but 14 boys and girls wanted to create their own company and steal ours. So I went over and lived in Germany to protect the business and transform culture, people, and so forth. And so that business needed a home. It needed to merge. It needed to grow some scale. And so when Halian was acquired in November of last year, with Stuart and the MBO, with the T20 guys, the opportunity to bring Halian and Staff Group together and merge them to create, a synergy play in terms of geographies and territories and so forth became, I guess that, it became obvious. And so we completed that transaction, I think, in sort of March this year. Stuart asked me to stay along as sort of business partner for a period of time, to which I did while we integrated the two brands. And then,
so are they all going to be called Halian now?
It's all Halian. Yeah, it's all Halian. Yeah. And that's a great business and a great platform and some fantastic people, in the territories who've got the opportunities like I did to go and build out their own sort of journey. So that's Halian, and so my sort of exit was concluded sort of October of this year, and 24. I'm free to go and explore and do something new. Bringing the journey full swing to the sort of 10-year tenure.
So were you remunerated for these exits and
very well.
You built?
Absolutely. So again, did very well. Life-changing sums of money. But I think one thing that's taught me is, whilst you're thankful and grateful, the other side of that equation, was sort of tenfold in terms of earnings. So it was my time, I guess. It was the opportunity I really capitalised on, which is why I come back to the advice of a lot of entrepreneurs or successful people, because I've been burnt 3 times before on promises of wealth creation, and I hear that rhetoric a lot in the recruitment space because of the money that's flying around. And I would just say to
Yeah.
people, make sure that's watertight and it's fit for purpose, because it's easily said, but very rarely actually delivered upon. But in these
When you
last
say
4 years,
watertight or fit for purpose, what do you actually mean?
well, you hear all sorts of schemes, right? LTIPs, growth shares, and actually, if they're not legally bound, if they're not drawn up, and you've got shareholders agreement, and then you're at the whim of the owner at some point in time, and we know people change their mind, right, and don't fulfill upon a promise. So I guess one of the things I've learned in life is, um, I guess I've been vulnerable, not vulnerable, yeah, vulnerable, and then, naive to trust people on word rather than actually on contract. And that would be only my advice I give when people start
That's
talking
probably,
about
though,
creation.
probably because you would follow through on your word, right?
Well, I think, yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. And I just see it too
That's where it
often,
comes
right?
from.
Yeah, it does. It does, because I guess the nice guys don't always win, right? But the last 4 years have been very good, very good.
So now to summarize that, so you've brought PMP from a loss-making business, 300 million turnover, to making, would you say 10 million in, was that EBITDA
Yeah,
profit, or is that
yeah.
gross profit?
No,
Yeah,
EBIT.
EBITDA. So you're getting 10 million EBIT out of the business.
Yeah,
You've
I mean,
then gone in and helped
by the way, I would
the
always
T20
normalize.
guys.
Sorry, Sean. I would always normalise that number because of the COVID lift. So if you're looking, what did Jay and the team do? I'd say it sat around 8, right? If we take out the COVID spike on profitability, which was an anomaly
Yeah.
for everybody, right?
It's
But,
still an incredible achievement. Still an incredible achievement. And you've then, what it seems to me is you've got an ability to sit in a business, regardless of your experience, a business of scale, and find efficiencies, galvanize people, build culture, build rapport, and drive those drive those results through. How would you do you think your skill set is only aligned to those bigger scalable businesses, or would you go into or even create your own small business and follow a similar method?
yeah. I mean, the answer to the question is it's fit for purpose for both, right? So, for example, if I take my time when I was 29 years of age, moving to America with my wife, my son, and my soon-to-be baby girl, the business out there at the time was doing $4 million in sales, delivering, manpower solutions. And when I left, it was doing 60 million. I would open up in 12 offices, right? Because somebody went and did the door knocking, sold, and then we delivered the service or solution. So that entrepreneurialism, I think, is fit for both establishments. And as I assess what I'm going to do next, there might be some co-invest, there might be some non-executive roles where I want to help organisations grow and transform, because I guess I've got the life lessons which are transferable and have I can look through a different lens, and if I can support and coach and mentor and get people to think perhaps differently and believe in their dreams can be chased down, etc., etc. Really doesn't matter what the size of the business is, because they can scale very quickly. To put me into an organisation, for me to be there full time and to fund me, etc., then clearly it's got to be something of scale, or I'm co-invested in the upside of something I'm building out, a new territory, region, vertical, whatever it may be. So yeah, there's some interesting opportunities.
So if someone's listening to this thinking, I like the sound of Jamie, I wouldn't mind reaching out and having a chat, what would you say, what's what can you do for them? How could you help them?
Well, I mean, it's growth, it's transformation, or it's coaching, mentoring, right? I mean, some people have done that. I always, invite requests. I mean, there's a couple of guys, you probably know them because they're part of the Recruit Hub, a couple of guys who set up on their own. I had a VC with them the other week. they shared with me a non-exec proposal. I laughed, I put it in the bin and said, look, I tell you what, I really like you. If I can give you an hour or two a month on a VC, then I'll do it pro bono, right? And that's not because I'm a charity, but actually I really like them. They've got some real energy. They're doing some great stuff. I enjoyed their conversation, and they think I can provide a bit of counsel and guidance. And when they make all their money, they can take me out for a dinner or donate something on a charity page. But actually, I felt energized by the conversation, and so they were giving me something back, because clearly, I'm not amongst people in teams.
And since we started talking, I've obviously followed you on Instagram, and you put a lot on there about your life, and you're very open, and you're doing your cold plunging every day, and you constantly you put out a very positive message on a daily basis. So, how would you describe your life? Because you don't strike me as someone who's overly stressed from the offset. You look like you're having a great time. That's the vibe I'm getting. So, do you need to work? Are you working because you need to? You work because you want it? Like, how would you describe your life?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm in a privileged position. I don't need to work, right? So, but I guess I haven't needed to work for quite a while. So, I do use a phrase, it's a hobby, not a job. Do I want to get back into business and helping organizations? The answer is yeah, because, for the last 9-10 years, I've been working with hundreds, thousands of people, helping them transform their businesses in some shape or size. And of course, that community, that belonging, and it comes back to my childhood and families. Every business that I've gone in, they've become an extension of me, in terms of family. They've given me something to be a part of. I think that's very evident. And so when you finish with an organization or a group, as I did, there's a big void, right? There's only so many times I can walk the dog or pester my wife. I've been married for 25 years and she's never seen as much as me in the last 3 months as she has in 25 or 30 we've been together. And so, there's a craving inside me to be a part of something or many things and give back. And that's, and so the ice baths came about, one, because I wanted to bring some structure. I wanted to test myself. I wanted the resilience. I'd looked at the health benefits, but actually one of the things that it really gave me was a link to it, the Instagram and strangers around the world and share, right? And because I needed that. I've just started, as you've probably seen, Zoe this week and sort of understanding the gut and nutrition. And so it's all part of that continued learning for me and being part of communities where, people are doing good. And the whole health and well-being piece, that's really important, because at 33 years of age, nobody prepared me for an epiphany moment. And so I see, so many people in our sector that are heading towards that red zone, because the stress, the pressure, they were a hero, now they're a zero. They're overspending the money they're earning and not saving. All these things that life is putting on their shoulders at a young age. And that was me, and I popped at 33. And so when I talk about, mental health and stress and so forth, I can talk because I can be vulnerable, because I went through it, I lived it, and came out the other side with help and support. So what you see on Instagram is partly to wind my kids up. I haven't been on there that long. It's mainly because I was so remote and they could see what I was doing. But actually, a sense of giving back and sharing, and if that helps one person, then for me, I've given back and I'm doing okay.
Jamie, thanks so much for your time, mate. That was awesome. I think we could do another episode on this and talk more about that mental health journey. We've run out of time, unfortunately, today. But if anyone does want to reach out to you, is LinkedIn a good place to do that?
Yeah, absolutely, buddy. Yeah. Or you can find me in an ice bath in Insta, but yeah, LinkedIn's
on Instagram. But yeah, we'll tag you and everything. But like I say, I hope people reach out. I think you've added a lot of value in the conversations we've had, and I think there's plenty of recruitment owners who will resonate with this. So I hope they do, and we'll get you back on again in the future. I no doubt you're going to land in some pretty epic role in the next year, and I'll get you back on and we'll talk about what you do.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Sean. Take care, buddy.
Cheers, buddy.
See you, champ. Bye-bye.
Thank you as always for listening to today's show. I truly hope that you got value from it. Honestly, it's the only reason I take time every week to ensure that my audience, you guys, future and existing recruitment owners, you're learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. And today's episode is brought to you by my business, Hoxo. I'm the CEO and founder, and we're on a mission to help brand recruitment agencies and their people better. I want to help people have the tools to stand out in the most competitive markets in the world. We're currently working with over 350 recruitment agencies and 5,000 of their consultants right now, helping them to build their personal brands, to consistently win more business, attract talent, and just become that go-to recruiter in the market. Now, we do have a huge coaching program, but a lot of people don't know we also manage the brands of a lot of founders, and we can do the rebrand of that company organizational piece as well. So if your recruitment agency either needs help to look and sound exactly how you want it to, or your leadership and consultant level need to get out there and drive more traffic back to that website, to the business, and start using LinkedIn to generate more revenue, then you should definitely be reaching out to us. If that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean, a personal message on LinkedIn. I love hearing from RAG listeners. I would love to talk to you. Look forward to it. So I'll see you again next week with another episode. Catch you soon.